Bonjour.
Good morning, President. President, ladies and gentlemen, on the 25th of May, European citizens spoke to us, and they sent us clear and strong messages, sometimes, however, contradictory in nature. Today, and over the course of the next few years, we have to answer those messages. We have to meet their expectations, we have to allay their fears, fulfill their hopes, and we have to provide a dream as well, because in Europe there is a space, there is room for a dream. And it's here in the European Parliament, it's where European democracy actually works on a daily basis, that I want to set forward the general guidelines that will steer the work of the next Commission. And I'm saying guidelines, general guidelines that I will put to you, brief outlines, brief guidelines that I have sent to you in writing in all the official languages, because all languages have equal dignity. And I'd like to thank the translators who spent a sleepless night, because I finalized the text only late last night. The detailed program, the detailed work program of the Commission will be the task of the Commissioners, and it will be your task to legitimize them by swearing them in the autumn. The Parliament, which has just started its new term of office, is a Parliament which is different to its predecessors. You are the first Parliament which is really electing a President of the Commission, electing in all senses of the word. You will elect the President with a new spirit in mind. After the European elections, you insisted on the demand that exists now to take into account the results of this universal suffrage. And in doing this, you have given full meaning to these elections, a real democratic and political significance to Article 17, paragraph 7 of the Lisbon Treaty. Without your insistence and without your pleas, this Article 17 would have remained a dead letter forever. You defended the democratic principle, and you were right to do so. A Parliament which imposes the observation of the democratic principle is carrying out a noble task, and it doesn't deserve unjustified criticism, and people shouldn't read things into the Parliament's intentions with bad will. I'd also like to pay tribute to the other heads of list who also helped to liven up the democratic debate during the election campaign. If the political family of one of them had actually won the European elections, and I would have been the first to ask this House to entrust the task of running the next Commission on that head of list. The Parliament and the Commission are two community institutions. They are very important European institutions, and therefore it's natural that the President of the Parliament and the President of the Commission on the one hand, that the Parliament and the Commission on the other hand, actually maintain very close and privileged working relationships. And so we will be community players, not working in concert against the Council, not working against the European Council. Europe cannot be built in the teeth of the nations, in the teeth of the member states. The nation states have not been just invented in a temporary way by history. They are there for the long term. And we in the Commission and Parliament will act in the general interest, and I would like us to work together to do that. The European Council nominates the candidate for the President of the Commission, and that's not done by the Secretaries General. The Commission is not a technical committee made up of eminent civil servants. The Commission will be a political body. I want it even more of a political body. It will be a highly politicized body, and the composition of the Commission can reflect the plurality of the different ideas that are emerging. And I would like the European Council, when it organises its internal structures, I would like it to be inspired by the same principle. The President of the Commission is elected by this Parliament, and that doesn't mean that the President of the Commission then receives orders from the Parliament. I will not just be Parliament's aide de camp, Parliament's servant, but don't doubt for a second that I am determined to put an end to the office of the sort of President of Commission that you would no longer have been able to put your trust in. And I am determined to ensure that I put forward legislative proposals that will react to your initiatives and your ideas. Also, the right to put questions will not be restricted in any way. That will remain as it stands. So I'm going to ask the commissioners to take part more often when there are important trialogues going on in the Parliament, and I would like the Council to do the same. And I will ensure that the registers for lobby becomes a public register and a compulsory register. I want European people to know who's been to see whom, who has talked with whom. So I'd like the other institutions to follow us in this procedure when it comes to the publication of the register of lobbyists.
Je ferai en sorte.
And I will ensure that the rules of procedure covering the various authorisations in this area, that this be reviewed. I don't want the Commission to be able to decide if a majority of Member States hasn't approved this.
D'une façon.
And generally speaking, ladies and gentlemen, let's give up ideology. Let's not have ideological debates that just has the aim of deepening divisions. Let's replace those by useful debates that are fruitful, based on strong convictions and based on convictions that will take us a long way. Let's choose a pragmatic method. Let's concentrate on what we can achieve in practice in order to engender positive benefits for all Europeans. Let's not bore those people who are watching us and tire them out with interinstitutional wrangling, which will take us away from what's essential, which is looking after the needs of European citizens. And I say to the governments, resist more often the temptation of criticising decisions you've just taken together when you get back home to your capitals. Resist the temptation to criticise Brussels.
Si vous avez dit oui à...
If you said yes in Brussels, don't say no elsewhere. And don't say ever again, after a meeting of the European Council or of the Council, that you have scored a victory and that the others have lost out. In Europe, we can only win if we win together, and we all lose together if we lose. Europe has become unreadable, incomprehensible, because too often we turn its description of its activities into a caricature. Let's no longer carry on with national navel gazing. Let's play as a team at the European level. Let's apply the community method for adopting legislation. It's demanding, it's true, but it's effective, it's efficient, and it's proved its worth, and it's more credible than drifting off into the area of intergovernmental agreements. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's breathe new life into the community decision-making method.
Ja, Herr Präsident.
Yes, President. Now I'm going to speak the language of the winners of the World Cup.
Ja, Herr Präsident.
President, yes, Europe has lost some of its credibility. The gap between the European Union and its citizens has actually increased and is increasing. Only those who are completely blind or completely deaf don't realise this, don't hear it and don't see it. The European Union very often needs to explain itself more, and it's up to us to deliver better. We've got to explain Europe better. Europe, President, needs a broadly based reform, an agenda for reform, and the status quo, business as usual, is not a complete array of options. We've got to broaden that. People are often frightened of reform. They see it as a threat, and they worry about it. But those who don't take risks are actually exposing themselves to the biggest risk. We have to take risks in order to make Europe more competitive. As the European Union, we have to maintain our international competitiveness. We've lost out there. We've lost our way because we've stood still. Now we've got to get going again and take the lead on competitiveness. And often that's confused with one-sided demolition of this welfare state. But you can't achieve competitiveness just by getting rid of social security. What we need to do is a broad-based approach to international competitiveness. And the European Union, if it's going to be successful, has to be the place that is the point of reference for people and for investors. The European location has to be important for investors. And we have to remember the principle that the economy has to serve people and not the other way round. The economy is there to serve individuals. And this means, by necessity, that the rules of the internal market are not more important than social minimum standards. Internal market is not more important than social affairs. Social affairs have to maintain their position in Europe. I am an enthusiastic champion of the social market economy. That means prosperity for everyone. That was said by Ludwig Erhard. Not just prosperity for some, but prosperity for everyone. That has to be the principle of our economic and social policy. Often people say, in talking of the crisis, that the social market economy has failed. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's not the social market economy that's failed. It's those who were sinning against the cardinal virtues of the social market economy who have failed because they were greedy. They just wanted profit. It wasn't the social market economy that brought about these changes. The social market economy will only work if there is social dialogue. And the social dialogue in the past years of the crisis has suffered, and both nationally and above all at the European level, the social dialogue has to be revived again, and I'd like to be the president of social dialogue. And then to ensure Europe as a location, that means we need growth. We don't need to finance finance debts. That doesn't help us create jobs and increase the growth in the economy. What we need is sustainable growth over decades. What we need is an ambitious program of investments to enhance growth, employment and competitiveness. That's the package we need. And why do we need this? Because many people in Europe have to be brought back to Europe. Europe has to be part of their lives, an important part of their lives. So a package of investments to promote growth and investment and competitiveness will only have one goal, and that is to ensure that people are taken back into the heart of our concerns, the heart of our economy. So now that the time is right within the borders of the European Union to have a 29th state, and that is the state where those live who have no jobs. This is where young unemployed people are living. This is the state of those who are rejected, those who have been left by the side of the road, those who have been left behind. I'd like this 29th member state to be turned back into a normal member state. Therefore, I am suggesting an ambitious programme of investments. By February 2015, I would like this ambitious growth, investment and competitiveness package to be turned into a working programme, a working package. And I would like, over the next 3 years, to have 300 billion euro in both terms of public and private investment raised and mobilised. We're going to do that, and I'd be grateful if the Parliament were to support me in this path, on this path, and we can do this by having a targeted use of the structural funds, the existing ones, and a targeted use of the available tools which can be extended, the tools of the European Investment Bank. We need investments in infrastructure projects. We need to coordinate investments between the member states. We need investments in the area of broadband, in energy grids. We need investments in transport infrastructure and in industry clusters. We need a reindustrialization of Europe, and we need investment in industrial sector. We need investment in research, development, renewable energies. Renewable energies are not just the area where people who are ecologists have the say, and it's not just their domain. Obviously want to extend the use of renewables, and that's the basis of ensuring that in the future Europe will have sustainable advantageous sources of energy, and that we will remain a competitive location compared to other parts of the world. So a Europe which is strong and which can invest is a Europe which stands for more welfare, more prosperity, more jobs, and investments are the best ally of the unemployed. And in parallel to that, when we had to extend and strengthen the youth guarantee, what I would like to see is that this age limit, that it be raised gradually from 25 to 30. And investments are only they're going to be used in a targeted way if, when it comes to bureaucracy, we can then reduce bureaucracy and move away from the red tape burden on SMEs, for example. SMEs don't have masses of capital. SME owners work very hard. They create jobs. So we have to do more for small and medium-sized enterprises, above all through the determined reduction of the bureaucratic burden and the reduction of red tape. And we've got to be serious when we talk about using the principle of subsidiarity. Since the Maastricht Treaty, we've been talking about the correct use of the subsidiarity principle, but we just don't use this principle well. Our speeches actually last longer than the efforts we may actually make in removing away from bureaucracy. And in order to ensure that the European Commission and the European Union, instead of dealing with all sorts of tiny details in every corner of people's lives, instead of that we should be dealing with big European issues. So we shouldn't Europeanize every tiny problem in the European Union. We should be dealing with the big tasks, the big challenges. So, President, all of this has to be done in conformity with the Growth and Stability Pact. The Growth and Stability Pact will not be changed. Its basic principles will not be altered, and this is something the European Council has observed, and I'm going to stick to that rule over the next few years. Stability was promised when the common currency was introduced, and stability isn't just a criterion you have to meet in order to join the Economic and Monetary Union. It is a lasting decree. We have to keep our promise. We can't break our promise when it comes to stability, and I will not break that promise. But the European Council has quite rightly observed that the flexibility margin, which in 2005 and 2011 were brought into the reformed Stability Pact, should be used as well, so that the growth dimension of the Stability and Growth Pact is fully brought to the fore. And in the past we did do that, and we will do that to a great extent in the future. But it's also important that we make the observation, President, that what we've done in past years, what we have achieved in past years, what we have brought into being, is something we shouldn't underestimate. I was a chairman of the Eurogroup, and I'm pleased that I'm not chairman of the Eurogroup anymore. it's quite a task. But also as to whether the task I'm applying for today will be more pleasant, well, I'm not even sure whether that will be an easier job at the end of the day. But during the euro crisis, which wasn't a euro crisis, it was a debt crisis, in fact, we were trying to repair a plane that was on fire while it was in the air. That wasn't easy, and you have to be a very clever diplomat. You think it doesn't always look pretty what you have to do, but we did manage to keep the Eurozone going. We kept the plane in the air. And about a year ago, speculators from all quarters and people are laughing. People were actually betting that the Eurozone would actually collapse. It would implode, but that didn't happen. And on many financial markets, wagers were entered into that Greece would leave the Eurozone. I did all I could, and I'm proud of that, to ensure that this hard-working people, that this great state is still part of the Eurozone. But, President, we did make mistakes. If you are trying to keep a burning plane in the air and while repairing it, that's not an easy job, and you burn your fingers from time to time. And in the future, what I would like, if we're going to have adjustment programs, and I don't see any need of actually necessarily having that over the next few years, but I would. But before an adjustment programme is brought into play, I would like there to be a very detailed social impact study to be carried out. I'd like to know what sort of effect adjustment packages will have on the lives of people, so in the future there won't be an adjustment programme without a social impact assessment being carried out in advance. And I'd also like that every time, if adjustment programmes are being discussed, that there be a plan B prepared at the same time, which we could then refer to if the macroeconomic forecasts turn out not to be correct. If there's less growth in a country than was actually taken as the basis of an adjustment programme, then you have to be able to adjust the adjustment programmes. So I'm in the favour of the creation of a plan B in parallel in all these cases. And I would like, when it comes to the Troika instrument, I'd like us to reflect on that anew. The Parliament has come up with reports according to which the Troika is actually lacking democratic substance in the way it works at the moment. It's lacking democratic substance. There is no parliamentary dimension to the Troika. We have to ensure that we rethink the Troika, that we make it more democratic, subject to parliamentary scrutiny. We will do that.
Mr. President, we cannot spend money we don't have. And we have to replace deficits and debt by ideas. These ideas are there. We must better use the opportunities of the digital technology, which doesn't know any border. We must break down national silos of telecommunication regulations, of copyright, of data protection. We have to break down national silos as far as the management of radio waves is concerned, and so forth. We must knock down these barriers, these hurdles to growth. Roaming charges in Europe have to disappear, and they will disappear. If being successful by implementing a real digital single market, we can generate 250 billion euros of additional growth in Europe, and will do it. We need, as it was so often said, mainly during the Ukraine crisis, we need a resilient energy union with a forward-looking climate change policy. We have to reorganize Europe's energy policy into a new European energy union. We need to pool resources, combine infrastructures, and unite our negotiating power vis-à-vis third countries. We need to diversify our energy sources and reduce the high energy dependency of several of our member states. I do think that the European Energy Union will become the world #1 in renewables and will contribute to significantly enhance energy efficiency beyond the 2020 objective, notably when it comes to buildings. A binding 30% objective for energy efficiency by 2030 is, to me, the minimum if we want to be credible and forward-looking. We cannot pretend to be the leader as far as climate change policy is concerned if we are not becoming more efficient when it comes to energy efficiency. The internal market has to be completed. If we will be successful in this, we will add another 200 billion euros of added value to the European economy. We have to do it. We have to complement the new European rules for banks with a capital markets union. To improve the financing of our economy, we should further develop and integrate capital markets. This would cut the cost of raising capital, mainly for small and medium-sized enterprises. Free movement of workers has always been one of the key pillars of the internal market. I will defend that principle. Free movement is an opportunity, not a threat. The rules will not be changed. It will be up to national authorities to fight against abuse or fraudulent claims. I will initiate a targeted review of the Posting of Workers Directive and of its implementation. We have to fight social dumping, and we will do it. I will combat tax evasion and tax fraud. I am in favour of the adoption at EU level of a common consolidated corporate tax based on financial transaction tax. We have to fight against money laundering, and we will do it. Pour ce qui est de l'Union économique et monétaire, Monsieur le Président.
As regards Economic and Monetary Union, President, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the crisis isn't over.
La crise n'est pas.
The crisis is not over as long as there are 25 million people unemployed. The crisis will be over once we've restored full employment. And in order to achieve that, we have to have better coordination of our economic policies. We have to set up economic governance, a sort of economic government. We will do that. We have to remain demanding when it comes to the need to push forward structural reform, which on the mid-term will contribute to the growth of the European economy. If the member states of the Economic and Monetary Union make particularly great efforts, then we'd have to just reflect on financial incentives which could then accompany that process of great effort. And in that context, we'd have to reflect on the setting in place of our own budgetary capacity for the Eurozone. We have to stop being in a ridiculous situation of representing ourselves as one of the strongest currencies of the world, while we have so many different representatives of the euro who often contradict each other. I would like the Economic and Monetary Union, I like the euro to be represented by one single person, one single chair, one single office. As if I'm in Bretton Woods, I'm in the middle of the United States, and I'd like to say a word about the free trade agreement with the United States. I'm in favour of completing that agreement. I believe that the two biggest economic spaces, the two biggest areas of democracy on the planet, should pool their efforts in the interest both of the Americans and of the Europeans. Having said that, the agreement cannot be concluded at any price. We can't abandon our standards in the area of health. We can't give up our social standards. We can't forfeit our demands when it comes to protection of data confidentiality. I wouldn't like data protection to be part of the negotiations with our American friends, and I wouldn't like us to be setting up a parallel secret jurisdiction. We are areas of where the rule of law prevails in the United States and in Europe. Let's apply the law, and let's ensure that these negotiations are surrounded by maximum transparency. I'm saying this, if we don't publish the related documents, I'm not talking about the documents on the negotiating strategy, but if we don't publish the main documents, this treaty will fail. It will fail in the eyes of public opinion, it will fail in the eyes of this Parliament, it will fail in the eyes of our national parliaments if there were to be a mixed agreement. So let's be more transparent, because we have nothing to hide. We shouldn't create the impression that we have something to hide. Let's keep everything transparent. All related documents will be published. The European Union is a union based on values. We are credible in the eyes of the rest of the world, and we will remain credible if we are demanding inside Europe when it comes to the protection of our fundamental values. I will appoint a commissioner who will be responsible for the Charter and the application of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And I would also like the European Union to join as soon as possible the members of the European Convention of Human Rights of the Council of Europe. The directive, the anti-discrimination directive, will still be on the table. And I will try to convince the Council to adopt this as soon as possible, at least as regards its major outlines. As for immigration and migration, legal migration and illegal migration, these are topics which practically on a daily basis concern our citizens. We need a common policy for European asylum, and I will be proposing a common asylum policy. We have to reflect on illegal migration. We have to reflect on legal migration in Europe, because in 50 years' time, in the next 50 years, we'll need very much this migration, this legal migration. And at the moment, the US, Canada and Australia attract legal migrants, and we can attract them as well. We can, as ever, I thought there might be moments of excitement, and I thought this would be the moment of my speech when there would be a bit of a high moment. Let's to protect our external borders. You might like that more. Let's protect our external borders. Let's fight against the criminal gangs who are making money out of human misery. Let's help those who come to us. Let's help them back home so they can stay home rather than taking these unsafe boats to cross the Mediterranean. Let's ensure that there is better solidarity between the north and the south of Europe. Illegal migration, the problem of refugees, these are not the problems of Malta, Cyprus, Italy or Greece. These are problems of the whole of Europe. On foreign policy, President, well, I don't want to make major points here, but a common foreign and security policy is something that we urgently need. I think it would be right, as far as I'm concerned, and I will try to ensure this is the case, that the person who becomes the High Representative is no longer left out in the cold by our foreign ministers. That we need, if we're going to have a foreign policy, we need to represent it by one person to the outside world. The man or the woman who becomes the High Representative has this huge area of work, and needs to rely on the commissioners who are responsible for different sectors like development and so on. When it comes to defence, it's not of importance to me to see that the EU will then become a sort of counter player standing up against NATO. No, they have to work together, stand shoulder to shoulder. But in the area of defence, we need increased cooperation, as was made possible by the Lisbon Treaty, and above all, when it comes to procurement, we need more cooperation instead of us competing against each other and all individually creating and producing what we need as a joint together. And over the next 5 years, President, there won't be any new member states acceding to the European Union. From the point of view of today, that's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine that one of the candidate states with whom we are negotiating will have in time met all the accession criteria, and so no new member state will be meeting these criteria by 2019. But the accession negotiations will continue, and other European countries need a credible and honest European perspective, and this is valid above all for the countries of the Western Balkans, because this tragic area of Europe needs a European perspective, otherwise the old demons will awake.
J'aurais voulu vous parler, Monsieur le
President, I would like to talk to you about the need for an industrial policy. We have to create this in Europe in order to increase the role of industry in our GDP. I would like to see the industrial sector equaling 20% of European GDP. I would like to have talked in greater detail to you about Ukraine, and I'd like to greet the people of Ukraine today to say that we feel that this people is a European people, has its place in Europe.
J'aurais voulu.
And I would like to have gone into greater detail to explain why I think it's necessary that in all countries of the European Union that we set in place a minimum social wages, a minimum incomes for guaranteed minimum incomes, but we will be working in that direction. And I would like to express my conviction to you, and that is services of general interest and public services have to be safeguarded and protected. They can't be at the mercy of the whims of the time. Let's defend public services in Europe. And I would have liked, ladies and gentlemen, honourable members, to have talked about Africa, to have talked about this often unhappy Africa and often forgotten Africa, but also Africa is an area which is rich in resources and very rich in human resources. Let's not forget Africa, and let's to ensure that these tragedies cease, that these dreadful tragedies that we see every day, a man dying of hunger every 6 seconds, and that we lose 25,000 children every day in Africa because they are hungry. Every day 25,000 children in Africa die of hunger. So Europe's work is not over. Europe is responsible for changing this situation.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Yes, President, we'd have to start again in this area, get off to a new start. We have to listen to those who talked to us on the 25th of May. But it's not the time now to have a revolution. And I don't think the time is right for a counter-revolution either. If we want Europeans to fall in love again with Europe, let's say to them that we're proud of Europe. Let's say to our people that we are proud of the many achievements of Europe over past decades, and often it is said that the choice between war and peace is no longer relevant. But dialogue, this dialogue between war and peace remains there. We see tensions on our borders, we see conflicts on the borders of Europe. There we see that peace is not something that's on our continent forever. It's not something we can take for granted. So let's be proud of the past generations, of our fathers and our grandparents who came back from battlefields, who came back from concentration camps, and they said never again war, and that led to the unity of Europe. And let's not forget that. We owe everything to them.
Soyons fiers.
Let's be proud that we were able in the 90s to make a success of enlargement. We've been able to reconcile European history and European geography. We were able to put an end to the post-war division of Europe, though we thought that division was there forever. But without weapons, we reunited Europe because of our convictions. We brought geography and history back together again. And I'd like to pay tribute to those who in Central and Eastern Europe had those who decided one day that they would take history in their own hands, that they would no longer suffer at the hands of history, but they would take control of history. And let's no longer talk about old member states and new member states. There are just member states, neither new ones or old ones.
Et soyons fiers.
And let's be proud that we've created the single currency. The single currency doesn't split Europe. The single currency protects Europe. It protects Europe.
J'étais, Monsieur le Président.
President, I was a finance minister in my country for 20 years, and every 6 months I had to go to Brussels in order to take part in monetary realignments. Every 6 months I saw for myself the damage done by monetary disorder. I saw the damage done to the European economy by monetary upheaval, and I experienced myself many times the loss of dignity of a state because it wasn't competitive anymore and was forced to devalue its currency. I witnessed with a great deal of bitterness terrible scenes were those who had to increase the external value of their currency but didn't want to because that means they would lose markets, and those who had to wanted to devalue, they hardly dared because they were worried about massive influxes of a massive return of inflation. But if you look at the Ukraine crisis, and you look at the economic and financial crisis, which hit us hard and turned Europe into the epicenter of a global battle, if during that period we were still in the European monetary system at that point, Europe today would be having a monetary war. France would be fighting Germany, Germany would be fighting Italy, Italy would be fighting Portugal and Spain, in monetary battles, everybody against everybody else. And the euro and its discipline and its ambitions ensure that we see monetary stability which protects us. The euro protects Europe.
Et la Grèce.
And Greece, President. Greece didn't want to leave the monetary union, and we didn't want Greece to leave the monetary union.
What about Britain? I am defending the single currency because the single currency is protecting Europe, its economy, its citizens. Monsieur le Président,
President, if we hadn't done what we've been doing over the past decades, if we hadn't turned Europe into a continent of peace, if we hadn't reconciled history and geography in Europe, if we hadn't created the single currency, and if we haven't built in Europe the biggest internal market in the world, what sort of situation would we be in now? What sort of situation would we be in now? We would be ill-equipped, we'd be weakened, we would be without arms to defend ourselves today, but we can defend ourselves because of the conviction of our predecessors, and Europe, because of the efforts of our predecessors and because of our efforts, is a continent which ensures that those who live in Europe can live in peace and live with relative prosperity.
Just a moment, Mr. Juncker.
Wir verstehen Sie auch, wenn Sie nicht so laut schreien.
I also understand you when you don't shout. You could just speak in a reasonable state. Please do not interrupt the speaker constantly.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Président, je ne veux pas.
President, I don't want a Europe that's just consigned to history books. I don't want a Europe which just watches others while they're acting, sits there twiddling its thumbs while others move ahead. I want a Europe which is on the centre stage, which wins, a Europe which attacks, which exists, and a Europe which is a model for others, a Europe which pushes ahead. In order to do this, let's take our inspiration from the principles and the convictions that were left to us by the big major European founding fathers who were there at the very beginning of Europe. And I'd like to pay tribute to Jacques Delors, who was a very important, a major president of the European Commission.
N'est pas Delors qui veut.
Mr. Delors is my friend and a master, and his work will inspire me every day. I'd like to pay tribute here to François Mitterrand. François Mitterrand, who said that nationalism leads only to war, and François Mitterrand was right. And I'd also like to pay tribute to Helmut Kohl, who was, while I was alive, in my youth, the most important European, the most noble European that I had the fortune to meet. Let's do the same as them. They were patient, they were courageous, and they were determined. Let's be as courageous, let's be as determined, and let's have the same patience, and let's have this patience that's necessary, that's courage that's necessary, and the determination that's required for these long paths we have to follow because of our major ambitions. We can do great things together, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Europe, on behalf of its citizens, on behalf of the world. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.